Hello fellow collectors, I hope you are doing wonderfully well. Today I bring you the second instalment in my new series where I talk about a particular actor or director and then 3 of their films. And today I'd like to talk about Rick Famuyiwa. Now he might not be a director that you're immediately familiar with, as unfortunately he just hasn't made that many films, but 2 of his in particular I've really enjoyed over the years. He's an American filmmaker that grew up in Inglewood, California, and made his debut feature in 1999 after taking film studies at USC. Since then he's been involved in just 5 feature films, having directed 4 and co-writing 1 which Casey Lemons actually ended up directing. In more recent years though, he's actually been a lot more involved in TV and the Star Wars TV shows in particular, having directed 6 episodes of The Mandalorian and serving as an executive producer on season 3. Some might also be familiar with him because, for a while anyway, he was hired by DC to direct The Flash, which unfortunately he left due to, as they say, creative differences, which is just a real shame because I would have loved to have seen what he would have done with that film. And so, why am I talking about him today? Well, very recently I picked up this lovely Criterion edition of Love, Jones, which is a film from 1997 and directed by Theodore Witcher, starring Larenz Tate and the beautiful Nia Long, who I'm sure I've had a bit of a crush on since I first saw her in The Fresh Prince. I really enjoyed this film, and it's a story that weaves a romance alongside music and poetry, and those added elements I thought really elevated this film. But while I was watching it, I couldn't help but compare it to this one here, Brown Sugar, from 2002 and directed by, you guessed it, Rick Famuyiwa. And I think my preferred film of the 2, and the first one that I'd like to talk about today. So, Brown Sugar, as I said, from 2002, and this one stars Sanaa Lathan, Taye Diggs, Mos Def and Queen Latifah. And similar to Love Jones, this one weaves a romance alongside a love of music, and in this case, for hip-hop. I think the last time I saw this one was probably 4 or 5 years ago, so it was well due for a rewatch. This is a film I first discovered while I was at university, so probably 15 or 16 years ago now, and I've really enjoyed watching it on several occasions throughout the years. And so perhaps it's just because it's much more familiar to me, but I do feel like this film has more of a heart to it than a film like Love Jones, which I felt lacked a bit in that department. It's the story of 2 childhood friends where their history, friendship and feelings have all become mixed together over the years. They both discovered hip-hop at the same time, and their mutual love of it has played a huge role in shaping their lives and careers. As the film starts, we see that they've been separated by distance for quite some time, but they are being brought back together as one of them is moving back to the same city. And as the story progresses, they circle each other, denying their feelings at times, wrestling with them, musing about them. Are they just friends or are they more than that? But life is still happening while they do this, with their jobs, other relationships taking their time, energy and efforts. Life doesn't stop to give them time to figure things out, just like it doesn't in real life when sometimes we could do with a bit of a break to get our feelings and our heads together when we are wrestling with various things. Sanaa Lathan and Taye Diggs have this easy and wonderful chemistry which makes their interactions so fun and engaging to watch, and Taye Diggs in particular looks like he's having a whale of a time. They play childhood friends so well, and you fully buy into them having known each other for many years as they banter back and forth, they joke and jostle each other, and show that vulnerability that you only can with people who have known you for the longest time. Though you could maybe call this one a rom-com, as it has romance and it has comedy, this isn't a straightforward one where you can call the shots ahead of time, where they meet, they're happy, and then it's a sad third act when one of them messes up before they get together again and it's all smiles for a happy ending, which is just hugely tiresome, formulaic and dull. Instead, we have a lot more going on here, and in particular the interplay between love for music and love for people, and that recurring motif really elevates this in an interesting way, as it plays a part in all of their interactions and choices. There is a wonderful line here where Lathan's character is talking about hip-hop, though I think it's applicable to music in general, and she says it's that first friend, the first to talk to us, the first to understand. And I thought that was just such a powerful line, and one that rings true, I'm sure, for many of us, where the music we listened to as we grew up shaped us. It helped us to know we weren't alone, that others were dealing with the same things, the same thoughts and doubts, as well as the same loves and joys, and the importance of having that expressed through music. I think this one also has a lot to say about the difficulties that we can face in our working lives, and in particular the battle between doing something that we love and doing something that makes good money, because unfortunately those are rarely the same thing. There's a really great moment where Taye Diggs' character is wrestling with this, because even though he works in the music industry, which is where he wants to be, his company only care about money instead of the art and craft of music, and he's started to think it's become a bit of a joke. But he makes good money there, money that affords a certain type of lifestyle, and importantly, a lifestyle that his wife enjoys. And that is no easy thing to leave. But it can be a bit soul destroying when you are staying somewhere just for the money, rather than following your dreams and doing something that's more true to what you really want to be doing. And the film, I think, does a really good job of showing the strain that that can have on a married relationship, and also how important it is to have people around you who support you and whose voices you can trust. And as someone whose job isn't my passion, this really connected with me deeply, probably a lot more so than when I first watched it. And lastly, how could I not mention the soundtrack? For a film that is so heavily about music, as you might imagine, the soundtrack is fantastic, and full of songs that you might not have heard for a couple of decades. Overall, I think this is a great choice if you're in a mood for a light-hearted romance. Because while it does hit on some familiar romantic beats, I think this one has a real depth to it, which makes it much more interesting than the usual films of its type, and importantly, gives it a longevity, which makes it very enjoyable over many rewatches. Unfortunately, there is only a DVD release of this so far, but given the calibre of the cast and the film, I really hope that we can see a Blu-ray in the future. Next up, and we have one of my favourite coming-of-age films, and it's this one here, The Wood, which is Rick Famuyiwa's debut feature from 1999. Starring as the adults, we have Taye Diggs, Omar Epps and Richard T. Jones, with a very brief appearance from Sanaa Lathan, and starring as the kids we have Sean Nelson, Dwayne Finley, Trent Cameron and Melinda Williams. So this one is a story of three close friends. We meet them on a wedding day where one of them is shortly due to get married, but he's gone missing, and it's about getting him back to the wedding on time. But then the wider story of how they all met and grew up together is told in flashbacks throughout the course of the day, as the film goes back and forth between the past and the present. We get introduced to young Mike, who has moved to a new state and started in a new school in Inglewood, California, which is where we get the title The Wood. He's in a new culture, a new place, and he has a lot to learn about what's cool here. And two boys, Slim and Roland, make friends with him and take him under their wing. What I love about this film is that it is hilariously honest about what it's like to be a teenager. There is a great few scenes where the three of them are going to a school dance, but decide that they need some breath mints before they go inside. So they go to a convenience store and end up witnessing a robbery. They get caught up with some of the gang members and then almost arrested. A harrowing experience for them, of course. And yet when they finally reach the dance, as Mike's voiceover tells us, all of that is immediately forgotten because the place is full of pretty girls and the hormones are raging, and it just cracks me right up because of how accurate that is. Young Mike is played wonderfully by Sean Nelson, and he in particular is fantastic here. He is awkward and unsure of himself, but trying his best to be confident and trying to seem like he has it all together. He has the most outrageously bad dance moves that will have you laughing out loud, as he manages to get dancing with a girl at one point, only to then massively put her off by his wild moves, which when we return to the present day adults, they seem to be very fond of reminding him. The film can't help but make you think about your own experiences growing up, wanting to seem cool and say the right things, but as it just so wonderfully shows on screen, coming off pretty silly, goofy and just uncoordinated at times. The film is also of course about a lot of first times, first dances, first loves, and just the roller coaster of emotions and experiences you have when you grow up, which include many embarrassing moments that are absolutely hilarious to watch. It's just an enormously funny film, and a film which shows the importance of friendship and of brotherhood. It's great seeing the three friends as adults because they have this wonderful camaraderie still, and the acting is brilliant too because you really buy into them having been friends for years, as their antics haven't really changed all that much. Indeed, there is almost as much childish hilarity to be had watching the adults as there is the kids, because the older ones still enjoy acting like kids at times. And I think that silliness and joviality that you have with your close friends, it never really goes away, does it? Whether you're a kid, a teenager or an adult. And it's just played perfectly here. Overall, this one is just a huge amount of fun and a delightfully honest take on a coming-of-age tale. I will just say, don't let the beginning of the film put you off at all, because initially they do break the fourth wall. I'm not sure why they included it, as it's by far the weakest and most cringe part of this, but let me assure you, after that it takes off and it is brilliant fun, and thankfully they don't return to it for the rest of the film. Sadly, this is another one that only has a DVD release, but again, I would love to see a Blu-ray of this. I think the film definitely deserves it, and it certainly deserves to be more widely seen. I'd actually love for a boutique label to pick this up, because I think it would make a fantastic release. And lastly then, that brings us to Dope. From 2015, and starring Shameik Moore, who you might recognise as the voice of Miles Morales from the Spider-Verse films, as well as Zoe Kravitz, Kiersey Lemons and Tony Revolori, who you might recognise from Marvel's live-action Spider-Man films, but more importantly from The Grand Budapest Hotel, and actually a couple other Wes Anderson films now too. So for me, I think this is by far the weakest film of these three from Rick Famuyiwa, but there are still plenty of things to enjoy about this one. I think at its heart it has a good message about no matter if you feel like you are being put into certain boxes by society or friends or culture or race, that actually you don't need to conform to that. You can be your own person and enjoy what you enjoy, whether that's different types of music or hobbies or interests. This is again a coming of age film, but it's one that sprawls out a bit into other areas, and I think that's my biggest gripe with it. It's a much less focused film, and I think the story just tries to do too much, which is why this one doesn't work as well as the other two films. So, we meet Malcolm, our main character, who is one of, similar to The Wood, a group of 3 close friends, and he has a recurring line in this. When people are asking him questions about his identity, who are you, and trying to define him, he just keeps saying, "I'm Malcolm." And I thought that was really great. He's a character that feels a bit caught in between categories and definition, but has no less confidence in being who he is, at least as much confidence as any teenager can have. The film retains that wonderful humour that Famuyiwa weaves so well into the stories that he tells, and there are more than a few laugh-out-loud moments in this one. As I said, it is a bit more sprawling, and by that I mean it doesn't just tell a coming-of-age story, though that is of course part of it. Actually, more in the vein of more generic teenage comedies, this one becomes a story where things depart from a realism, as the 3 friends get reluctantly embroiled in some drug business, and things get wilder and crazier, and to be honest, a big chunk of the runtime, particularly in the middle of the film, really flew by for me, because you are incredibly engaged in the madness, and looking forward to seeing what insane thing happens to them next. I think the editing and pacing really works well here. I also loved that there was a recurring character from The Wood, with DeAndre Bonds reprising his character from that earlier film. It's just a very small role, but a wonderful callback that I loved to see. Here again, music is certainly a big part of the story, though it's not threaded in anywhere near as well here, but it does have a great soundtrack. Overall though, I just think it has a far weaker second half of the film, which pushes the believability of the story too far, detracting from the impact of the events. And perhaps most importantly, the message of the film gets watered down here too, which I was a bit baffled and disappointed by. I've only seen this one twice, but I do remember the first time feeling something similar, and actually on this rewatch, I think there is a key moment where a powerful and poignant message gets lost in some meandering philosophising, which seems to not only contradict itself, but also the rest of the film, and it just kind of left a bit of a sour taste for me. The setting here, I think, might just be a bit too modern for Famuyiwa to really shine. Or else, I think he should have gone fully into it and just made a crazy adventure film where a trio of teenagers get embroiled in one madness after another, in the vein of much lesser comedies, because unfortunately the mixture here just doesn't fully work for me. But I will say, if you do enjoy the other 2 films, then this one is definitely worth checking out, and there are a lot of laughs to be had. Just to mention that out of the three, this is the only one that does have a Blu-ray release, thankfully. But unfortunately, when I was looking for it, it was just super expensive, so I just opted for the much cheaper DVD on this rewatch. But there is one available if you're keen to check it out. And well, that brings us to the end of the video and my thoughts on Rick Famuyiwa and 3 of his films. He's an underrated director in my opinion, and while of course I wasn't overly fond of Dope, both Brown Sugar and The Wood are 2 films I've enjoyed many times over the years, and I'm delighted to say still thoroughly enjoy both of them. I think they have a lot of value, a lot of laughs, and are just a pretty great time. And I really hope Famuyiwa makes more films because I think he's got a great eye and style for storytelling. Well, that is everything from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.